Blended learning is anything that uses a combination of in-person instruction, whether it's face-to-face or virtual, and autonomous online learning. So it's like a distance course that people do on their own, mixed with some kind of in-classroom or in-person instruction. Blended learning is a very efficient way to teach people, especially languages, because one of the things that we know about language learning is that people need copious amounts of practice. And that practice, like with any skill, works better when it's individualized. So you need to practice what you need to practice, not what the 22 other people in your class need to practice. So when you do blended learning, you can have a teacher working with a group of students, and then you can have students working on their own on the places where they need the most help. So it's a very efficient way to increase the productivity of instruction. Blended learning can make teachers' time in the classroom more effective because teachers can do what you should do in whole classes. They can have students working in small groups. They can offer information that everybody needs. They can have students working with pairs and partners on productive tasks, speaking tasks, writing tasks where they're giving each other peer review and peer feedback. But they can take all of the things that work better autonomously, that people do better on their own, out of the classroom. So students are reading materials that are interesting only to them, that are at the right level, that have the vocabulary words they're struggling with, that have topics that are relevant to whatever it is they need to be able to do in English. Students can work on listening if that's where they're really struggling. One of the things that we know about how language learning works is that people have to pay attention. If you don't pay attention, you don't learn. I mean, that makes sense on the surface for anything. If you don't pay attention to what you're learning, then you aren't going to learn anything. But a language is trickier. So if I'm giving a lecture that's really boring about, say, how language learning works, and you stop paying attention to me, but I'm talking to you in English, then you can think through your to-do list, you can plan your grocery shopping, you can figure out what you're gonna do this weekend, but you can check back in and you haven't missed that much. If I were doing it in a language that was not your first language and you stopped paying attention to me for 1 second, you would never be able to pick up where you were again. You have to pay attention for the psycholinguistic environment that you need for language learning to take place to actually happen. And so without attention, you can't have any language learning, which means that we need materials to be as maximally relevant as possible and as engaging as possible, which is why blended learning works so well for language learning. Students outside of the classroom can focus on things that are interesting to them. So I could assign one article to everyone in a class to read. And that article might be interesting to maybe one person, maybe no one. But if those students can all go and read articles that are actually interesting to them, they're going to be able to learn much more quickly. I actually saw this in an empirical study that we did with Voxy really early with a university in Mexico, where we took a bunch of students who were in the remedial TOEFL 4 class, which means they tried 4 times to get the TOEFL score they needed to graduate, and they could not get that TOEFL score. We gave them access to Voxy for 5 weeks, and we looked at what they did. Every single person read different articles, listened to different articles, used different materials. At the end of the 5 weeks, they overall as a class improved their TOEFL scores 22%, and most of them got the scores they needed to graduate because they needed that practice. They needed practice listening and reading in English, and they got the practice they needed when they were working with materials that were interesting to them.